Imagine you're sealed inside a steel sphere, dropping through the ocean in total silence. At 1,000 meters, the pressure outside could already crush a car. At 4,000, you've passed nearly every living thing on Earth. At 8,000, the water pressure is over 800 times what you feel at sea level, and you're still not at the bottom. The point you're falling toward is called Challenger Deep. It's the lowest place on the surface of our planet, and it sits at the bottom of the Mariana Trench in the western Pacific. Almost 11,000 meters down. If you dropped Mount Everest into it, the peak would still be more than 2 kilometers underwater. Only around 27 people have ever been there. More than 600 have been to space. So what actually happens to a body at the bottom of the ocean's deepest point? The short answer everyone assumes is that you get crushed like a tin can. The real answer is stranger than that, and it starts with pressure most of us can't actually picture. Water pressure at Challenger Deep is around 15,750 pounds per square inch. That's roughly 1,086 times the pressure at sea level. To put that in numbers, your body understands. It's the equivalent of about 50 jumbo jets stacked directly on top of you, or an elephant balanced on the tip of your thumbnail. At that pressure, a submarine hull built for shallow water wouldn't dent. It would fold in on itself in a fraction of a second. Here's the part that surprises people. Your body isn't mostly air. It's mostly water. And water, unlike air, barely compresses at all. So the popular image of a human body getting squashed flat like a can under a boot isn't actually what would happen to your flesh, your muscle, your blood. Those tissues are incompressible enough that the pressure alone wouldn't crush them the way people imagine. What would kill you first is the air. Your lungs, your sinuses, the pockets behind your eardrums. Every gas-filled space in your body would try to compress instantly, and it can't compress gently. At that depth, without a pressurized hull around you, those air spaces would collapse in milliseconds, and the surrounding tissue would follow. It wouldn't look like an implosion in a movie. It would be over before your brain even registered anything was wrong. A nerve. Signal from your fingertip to your brain takes about 15 milliseconds. The collapse would already be finished before that signal arrived. This isn't just theory. In June 2023, a submersible called Titan, carrying 5 people toward the wreck of the Titanic at around 3,800 meters, suffered a catastrophic failure of its pressure hull. Investigators concluded the vessel imploded in a fraction of a second, far faster than any human nervous system could register. It's a grim but real demonstration of exactly the physics described above, at barely a third of the depth of Challenger Deep, where the pressure is even less forgiving. This is why every vessel that's ever successfully reached the bottom has depended on one thing: a chamber strong enough to hold normal air pressure inside while pushing back against 1,086 atmospheres outside, without a single structural flaw anywhere in the hull. In January 1960, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh became the first people to do it, descending in a U.S. Navy bathyscaphe called Trieste. The dive took almost 5 hours. They spent about 20 minutes at the bottom before the ocean began doing what it does to almost everything down there, and they had to leave. For more than 50 years after that, nobody went back. Then, in March 2012, filmmaker James Cameron made the dive alone, in a submersible he helped design. And starting in 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo began descending again and again, in a vessel called Limiting Factor, until more people had visited Challenger Deep in a few years than in all of history before it, combined. Down there, it isn't just the pressure. There's no light at all. Not even the faint blue trace that lingers in the twilight zone above. The temperature sits just above freezing, and it never changes, not by season, not by day or night, because down there, those concepts don't exist. It is permanently, absolutely dark, in a way almost nothing on the surface ever experiences. So, if almost nothing can survive the pressure unprotected, what actually lives down there? This is where it gets genuinely strange. At around 8,200 meters, there's an invisible line. Above it, a handful of fish species exist. Below it, none do. Not one. The deepest fish ever recorded, a pale gelatinous creature called the Mariana snailfish, was filmed at just over 8,000 meters by a research team including biologist Mackenzie Geringer. Go even a few hundred meters deeper and fish disappear completely. Biochemist Paul Yancey spent years trying to figure out why. He found that deep sea fish load their cells with a molecule called TMAO, which stabilizes their proteins against the crushing pressure. The deeper the fish lives, the more TMAO it carries. But the math has a ceiling. Yancey calculated that beyond roughly 8,200 meters, a fish would need so much TMAO to survive that its blood would become too concentrated to function properly. Not evolution, not adaptation, just basic chemistry. Drawing a hard line across the ocean that no fish has ever crossed. But invertebrates don't play by the same rules. Drop a piece of bait to the bottom of Challenger Deep, and within hours it's swarmed by amphipods, tiny shrimp-like scavengers called Hirondelia gigas. Hadal Zone researcher Alan Jameson has documented them stripping wood and dead animals down to nothing within days, using digestive enzymes strong enough to break down cellulose, something almost no animal on Earth can do. There are also xenophyophores living down there, single-celled organisms that somehow grow larger than a human hand, and sea cucumbers found crawling along the trench floor itself, moving across a landscape under more pressure than exists almost anywhere else on the planet, with no light, near freezing temperatures, and conditions that would kill an unprotected human in less time than it takes to read this sentence. So the trench isn't empty. It's just selective. It has already decided with total indifference exactly what kind of life is allowed to exist at the bottom of the world and what isn't. We've now mapped the surface of Mars, and the Moon, and Venus in more detail than we've mapped our own ocean floor. Fewer than 30 people have ever seen Challenger Deep with their own eyes, and every single one of them made it back only because of a hull that didn't fail by even a fraction of a millimeter. It's not because nobody's curious, it's because the deepest point on Earth has spent millions of years perfecting exactly one thing, making sure almost nothing that reaches it gets to leave whole.